Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the best place to be on a Thursday night. Yes, you guessed it, you guessed it. It is Thursday Night Talk, and we are having our season finale. Can you imagine that? It seemed like just yesterday we began with our very first show, and Sister Kim Lynch was with me on that first show, and she is with me tonight on the final show of Thursday Night Talk for season number one. Yes, season number one. We are at the season finale of Thursday Night Talk for season number one. Very soon we will have season two for you, so stay tuned for that. And that promised to be awesome, just epic. Now, before we get any further, let me tell you about tonight's talk. Tonight we will look at childhood and adolescent deviance, preventions, and solutions. And we're going to do something a bit different. I'm going to hand over to Kim Lynch, and she will take the show from here. But before we do that, let's invite God's presence as we go into the program. Father God, we thank you for a wonderful season we've had thus far. We've had a lot of amazing sessions. We've met so many different persons, and this particular show has gone far and beyond shores that we've never thought we would have reached by ourselves. And we thank you for all of that. We pray, Lord, to be with the technology, with the internet, be with the devices, be with the hosts, co-hosts, the panelists, the producers, all these people, that tonight's show will be a blessing. So into your hands we commit this program in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Amen. And before I hand over to Sister Camelia Lynch, I just want to let you know that we are the St. Thomas District of Seventh-day Adventist. Churches comprised of Bel Air, Jackman's, Benchmore Hall, and we are pastored by Pastor Bernard Prescott. And I am your usual host, Justin Aline. But tonight, I am handing over the reins to my good friend, Sister Kim Lynch. Sister Kim Lynch, over to you.
Well, good night, everyone, and welcome to TNT Thursday Night Talk. This evening, we have with us to discuss childhood and adolescent deviance. We have Mr. Irwin Graves. Mr. Irwin Graves is a retired principal of Allen School. He was a former Deputy Chief Education Officer, and he has worked in education for over 40 years. And he is currently the Deputy Chairman of the Seventh-day Adventist Secondary School Board. Mr. Graves also serves as an elder of the Checker Hall Seventh-day Adventist Church. He is married with 2 children and is a proud grandfather. Our second guest is Leanne Hawkins. Mrs. Hawkins is a licensed clinical professional counselor. She's currently working at the MedStar Hospital, where she completes psychiatric evaluations in the emergency department. Leanne is married with 3 children, ages 6, 4, and 1 year old. Leanne has worked with young people all her life. She was a teacher from the age of 20, I say tender, while she was here in Barbados, where she taught for 2 years. She also volunteered as a Pathfinder club teacher for her church, and she created a sign language group ministry to support the young people of her church. She believes that regardless of where your life may have begun, you can make the choices to have a successful and happy life. I ask you to welcome Mr. Graves and Mrs. Hawkins as we get into our Thursday night talk. Now, this topic of childhood and adolescent deviance, we're focusing on the prevention and solutions. But before we get there, let's discuss first what is deviant behavior. What, to your mind, panelists, do you think constitutes childhood or adolescent deviance? I'll start with you, Mr. Graves, and then we'll hear Leanne.
Okay, thank you, Kim. It's good to be with you guys tonight for a short while. I I believe that we should have a good session together. Leanne is on the opposite end there, so we have done this before, not the same topic, but we have tag team before elsewhere.
Lovely.
On a number of occasions.
Fantastic.
So it's good to hear you, Leanne, one more time.
Before you start, I think it's important to know that Mr. Graves is my father, guys. No one said that. I'm one of the 2 children that was discussed earlier.
Yes. It was up to you to share. It was up to you to share.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for letting the piano to the bag. Okay, deviance is really by definition any action, activity, and you're talking about childhood or children and adolescents, their behavior that is out of the norm, breaks away from the norms of society. In other words, what we would normally accept as good behavior or acceptable behavior, it is not practiced. Okay? That is my definition in a nutshell. I will be prepared to give some examples after you hear Leanne's definition.
I was going to back that up with an example, actually. And my example is simply, particularly for younger children, deviant person is someone who is told to do something and immediately does the opposite. So that is considered a deviant behavior, particularly in children that are younger, because the expectations of children versus adolescent switches a little bit. But it's pretty much the same. Deviant behavior is what is contrary to the dominant norms in the society. And of course, based on the society, the norms change. So that, I have nothing else to add to that.
Okay, what I can do is I can give because you would want to have an example or 2, because a definition is not complete without examples.
Ow.
Okay, adding to what Leanne said, if you look at the examples of deviance in, let's say, adolescence, bullying is such an example. Examination malpractice, like cheating in an examination, you would not expect children to do that. Okay, truancy, it is something that we would expect children to go to school when they are sent to school. So truancy is deviance. And of course, drug abuse, drug use, vandalism. These are all examples of
Deviance.
Yeah.
Okay. As the program goes forward, I want to remind our audience that through the Zoom chat or the YouTube chat, feel free to send in the questions that you would want to ask our panelists. As we go on to our second question, now family is the primary.
Mr. Lynch.
Yes, please.
The YouTube link is what? Because there are a number of people who would like to view, but they want the YouTube link.
You can go to the St. Thomas District of SDA on YouTube, and you will see the live link streaming.
Okay. Thank you.
That's quite okay. Family is like the first and foremost area that children have their social interaction. Explain to your minds what the role of the family is in preventing the rise of deviant behavior. Leanne, let's start with you.
Okay, so family is where you get your first lesson. So pretty much whatever you're taught initially comes from family. If you have a shaky family background, then it can be impactful on those initial years, what is considered normal, what is considered right, where your values are pretty much taken from. So that has pretty much everything to shape your everything. It has a huge impact on what you consider right, what you consider that you want to do, what you want to live. For example, parents that smoke or drink, there's a high chance that your children will do it, because it's not only, it's considered normal. The difference is sometimes they may happen a lot earlier. For example, there's a legal age to drink, there's a legal age to smoke certain substances. However, if that is something that you've been seeing all of your life and something that is even encouraged in the house because it's not a big deal, then it's something that you would follow through with. Stealing. Sometimes parents, they are known for stealing cars. Sometimes they take their children along with them for various reasons. Even if it is just not having daycare. So I'm going to take you along with me. I'm going to show you the road. This is their form of income. This is their form of a lifestyle in terms of a job. And this is what they're passing on to their children, even though it is criminal. So those are values and stuff that you will get from the household. So I'm repeating your question. So how does it prevent deviance is similar. Now, obviously, everything cannot be placed on the parents because children have to make their own decisions.
True.
Right. So there's, but being in their lives, being cognitive of what they're going, knowing what they're going through. For example, when children are teenagers, if you know who their friends are, if you know where they're going, if you know who they're hanging out with, then if they're leaning towards a crowd that may be less desirable or maybe involved in certain things, you can jump in early enough and hopefully get them out of that situation. I remember when I was home, I think there was like a slogan or something on TV that would say, you know, parents are the anti-drug. Parents are the anti-drug. Like if you are, and I remember when I was in school and I went to the Adventist school and I remember there was a guy a friend of mine, and he used to smoke, I think it was like a mild or some form of tobacco, and his mother found out and she went off, and he was an Adventist, but he was in a community close by. She went off, and I remember he told me later someone offered him marijuana. He was like, "You mad? If I go home, I might smell that. I can't deal with it." And that was his reason for not doing what everybody else was doing in that particular community at that time. So knowing what your children are involved in and staying closely abreast with it, knowing what they're watching for the phone now or the internet, those are ways that parents can manage and hopefully limit deviant behavior that they may be involved in outside of the home.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yes, you are a grandfather.
Can I pick up from there?
You can pick up.
What I will say at the beginning, that parents and family members must exhibit love. Love must be the foundation in child rearing, so that the child feels that he or she is loved and will not have to look for love in other places. That is my first point. Secondly, parents as well as family members must have rules. Parents should set the rules, and all members of the family who are going to interact with this child or these children must be on the same page. The father and the mother must be on the same page. In other words, Leon would tell you that if you want to get something from me and I say no, the best thing to do next is to go to the mother and see if she will give. And therefore, parents must be in a position to say, what did your father, what did your mother say? And they must be on the same page, or else the child will play one against the other.
That's true.
Okay? Next point is that you must be consistent in your discipline. If something is wrong today, it is wrong at all times. There must be no wishy-washy behavior, saying today is okay, tomorrow, you confuse the child.
Yes.
And therefore, you must have a stable, and this kind of stable, I mean, looking at the principles in the family, must be such that the child knows what is expected of him or her. And I would say that sometimes parents make mistakes. And if as a parent, I make a mistake, I must be prepared to tell the child, I am sorry, I was wrong. You were right on this occasion, I'm sorry. And therefore, that puts in the child's mind the understanding that my father or my mother does not feel that he or she is God, and whatever he or she says has to be right at all times.
All the time.
Right.
That's a cultural shift that you mentioned there, though. That parent saying that they're sorry is a whole different cultural shift.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
like, I
we
fully
don't
appreciate
normally
that.
practice that in Barbados.
It's true. It's true. But
But
If I
it's
can
it's a very,
very necessary.
piggyback off of something that Mr. Graves said.
no, you road.
Um, you said that the father and the mother must be on the same page
Yes.
because there are several fathers and mothers that aren't in the same household. That can
Right.
be very, very challenging.
Yes.
Because, for example, if there are custody issues, I don't know how it is at home as much as it is over here, but there are lots of custody battles. People want 50-50 custody.
Yeah.
People want, people want the right to see their children, which they should
Children.
have. We don't want to pay child support. So it's
Mhm.
all these different battles that go on. And so what happens is and I'm going to use a father in this instance because most times mothers have primary physical custody, right? So if a
Yeah.
father has a child every other weekend, they essentially see those children 4 days in a week, a month, sorry, 4 days a month.
Yeah. Mhm.
Every other weekend, 4 days a month. So are you going to be the disciplinarian? Are you going to be the one doing the homework? Are you going to be the one correcting behaviors? Or are you going to be the fun? Let me make up for all the days of the
All
month
the
I
time.
have
Yeah.
not seen you, parent. Are you going to be the cool parent? And so that's where it can become very difficult. Are you upset? Were your parents together and then they divorced? Are they mad at each other? Are they using you to get back at each other? Like there's so
Yeah.
many like
Yeah. They're
different
very skilled. Very skilled.
variables that can
Mhm.
happen in the family unit because people, you may have a child, but the parents may not be married. They may not even be together. They may not even like each other.
It's
They
true.
may not even like each other. And then their interactions impact you. Sometimes you become the parent because you're trying to keep the peace, and then that can negatively impact your mental health otherwise. But they're just be mindful that the family unit is not cut and dry. There's several layers to it. It may be grandparents that are parenting. It may
Yeah.
be step parents, foster parents, adoptive parents. There's just so many options. But other than that, the points are absolutely solid in terms of having those rules and regulations and a set role. And also what I think you said it a little bit that to be consistent. Sometimes parents get tired,
Consistency. Yeah.
and the time that children know when to ask you certain things based on
Oh yeah.
how tired you are. When I was small, if he had something in the fridge that I wanted when he was sleeping, it was always a yes. So it was always a yes. So you children are smarter sometimes than we give them credit for.
Credit for. True.
And so and we have to be mindful if you're in the nuclear
Family setup. Yeah.
setup,
Yeah.
being on the same page, making sure that even like the parenting style is the same and stuff like that can help significantly.
I've heard young parents speak about that, not only family setups, but also parenting. You're parenting your child, but then the caregivers who may be the grandparents or the aunties, or you're going by friends and you give a direction about what you want for the child, and they don't necessarily be, oh, nobody don't do that no more. But you
Right.
set certain parameters in place. I think that is quite important. Someone noted that some of the systems that are put in place for young people who have come into deviant behavior, or after the behavior has manifested itself or is displayed, that the systems only come into place after. How can we avoid adolescents getting into or getting to the stage, becoming more involved in deviant behavior? How can we kind of pull back the reins? If you've noticed something, how can we drag them back? Now, you mentioned the things in the family and being consistent, parents and caregivers being on the same page in disciplining them, or not necessarily disciplining them, being on the same page in rearing them. What other things can be put in place to help pull them back if they are going towards deviant behavior?
So my very first job out of grad school was called MST therapy, which is multi-systemic therapy. And it took the 5 systems of the community, or 5 systems of a child, I should say, or a person's life. And you had to use those systems to steer them in the right direction. So it wasn't individual therapy, it wasn't family therapy. It was a combination of what were they doing in their free time in the community, what were they doing at school, what happens at home, themselves individually. And it was like it was just different layers of them. And if you have all of the outside influences steering them to a particular direction, chances are you'll have more success. I think initially it will be the parents' responsibility of finding them good social, or what we would call pro-social activities, which means what are they doing on their free time? Are they involved in sports? Where are they just walking in the streets with the boys? Are they do you know what where are they? What are they doing? Is it something that is wholesome but yet still interesting enough that they want to do it? Because sometimes you may, like, some people take their kids to go learn swimming, or they have peer activities, but all of the peers are doing something that's positive. That would assist them in staying outside of deviant behavior. There's also, you have to take into consideration, I think, sometimes where people live. If you live in a community, what we would call down here the hood, unless your parents can get you out of the hood, there is a strong chance that you will get involved in, whether it's, I don't know, gangs anymore, but you know, selling drugs, because that's what they do. You know, whether it's using or selling, what you see around you every day is normalized, and it is okay, and it's a means of, I have to live, you know, I have to support myself, or I have to support my mother. Maybe my mother can't make the bills, or whatever the case may be. So I think having them, sometimes parents may have to move, and that may seem a little
extreme.
It may,
Yeah.
but if it is to save the life of your child, it is going to be worth it. But you know, we would even see, we talk about it all the time, like even people down here that are like football players and stuff. There was one popular one called Sean Taylor when I first moved to Maryland, and he was like 25 years old, big football player, but he wanted to move to the hood because he want to represent his people, and somebody broke into his house and killed him, you know, because he stayed where he was. He had a lot of money, he was successful, but he lived the same place. So the people that there, they do the same behaviors, and he wasn't seen as an exception because, well, we know him, we grew up with him. We were like, nope, he was a target, and he was shot in the leg and hit in the artery, bled out, boom, gone. And so sometimes you literally have to pick up your house and move to save the children. And if not, sometimes the activities that you may have to involve them in, whether it is, and I'm thinking of Barbados, I don't know how much activities you guys have. I'm thinking like maybe even if it's like music lessons, but that may only last for a certain time. But mostly when they're teenagers, something that they're both interested in that is positive and that has people around it doing positive things. But I remember when I was in school, this guy was running track, and he said, I can't smoke, I have to run track. And running track was so important to him that even though others were doing it, he was going to do that because he wanted to make it in track. So things that are positive, that has, you know, certain rules and regulations, those are things that parents should encourage, strongly push, and even enroll their children in.
So
I would say,
discipline.
Yeah, I would say, Kim, that
yes, please go ahead.
Since the parent is so important in determining the final outcome, because I believe that, I think that we need to look back at the parent and see what can be done to help the parent, so that maybe we will have to have special parenting classes on child rearing, on the psychology of child development, so that they understand the kind of things that their child will face and the kind of challenges as parents that they would face, so that in the community they can be, or the church can run parenting classes. Okay. Now, Leon seems to have forgotten the groups that children can attend in Barbados.
Reminder.
In our church, from very early, you can join the Adventurers Club.
That's right.
And then you can become a Pathfinder.
Correct.
In schools, they have Cub Scouts and they have
Brownies,
troops and cadets. So try to get children in activities that are in groups that are positive, and which will develop them and give them skills for life. Now, if you find out that your child is practicing the deviant behavior, let's say that you happen to know, ask for help. There are agencies which you and your child can attend and get the necessary help. But don't just put your hand in the air and say, I don't know what to do with this child. I have tried my best with him or her, and look what has happened. There are people who are willing to help. There are agencies which can provide the kind of information and the kind of backup that you would need. So there are things that can be done to stop it or to mitigate it anyhow.
I totally agree with you. Go ahead, Leanne.
As you were saying that the agencies that are involved,
Yeah.
I strongly recommend therapy because that's what I do, right?
Mhm.
For a living.
Yeah.
But I am fully aware in Barbados when I was there is a stigma to going to therapy, you know, whether it's in the church or out of the church. In the church, it's like, take it to Jesus and that's it, you know, Jesus will help you through. And I'm not saying don't take it to Jesus, but when you have
Yeah.
diabetes or blood pressure, you take it to Jesus and you take yourself to the doctor. You understand? And
Yeah.
so when
Right.
you, similarly, if it is a mental issue of the mind, whether it's depression, anxiety, or just straight up, I don't want to listen to nothing that you have to say, there are people that are trained to deal with that you
Yes.
can and my thing is, are you going to try to avoid the stigma by not taking them to their detriment?
Mhm.
Because sometimes you just take them and after well, some damages takes years to unravel, but sometimes it's not always that case.
Yeah.
And there's some things that can be done with grief therapy and so forth. So I would say in this day and age, there is no reason not to utilize it. And even family therapy sessions, sometimes just no matter how you are interacting with your child and having the third party in that room to kind of help you see a different way to do things that maybe more make it a more successful family unit. I would highly recommend for my members of the church that don't believe in mental health therapy. I would say again, if you broke your leg, are you going to get a cast, or are you going to go and are you going to pray about it and probably splint it up and hope for the best? You're going to get a cast, and after you're going to go to the physical therapy too to make sure you have all your rotations in it. You understand? And we have a lot we believe in our physical health, but the mind controls the body, and if the mind is sick, the body is sick. So do not avoid mental health therapy.
And I think
They're help you use it.
And I think that's excellent because I did have two different agencies, members of our church who are trained therapists. Next Steps Family Center, engaging minds and enhancing the lives through counseling, education, and mentorship. They provide counseling support for adults, children, teens, and families. Their aim is to equip families with skills necessary to manage the emotional, social, and relationship needs of all its members. For your children and youth, we support you through situations of life events that may create fear, anxiety, depression, loneliness, low self esteem, or even deviant behavior. Equipping you with the skills to understand the approach to appropriately express your feelings, making wise use, and to live your full potential. The therapist there is Lydia Worrell. She's a registered counseling psychologist. The founder of Next Steps, and we also have on the screen you will see professional counseling in anxiety, depression, marital and premarital counseling at Life Intervention and Support Services. Their contact information is there because as the program progresses, we want you to not only recognize deviance, but we also want to direct you where you can get help for them. LISS, which is Life Intervention and Support Services, they provide proof that teletherapy works. Their clients have confirmed it, which means that they're getting help through telephone and other media as well. You can call the numbers on the screen. At the end of the program, we are going to show you this information again, because we want you to appreciate that help is possible, help is needed for some persons, and it is also available. We also want to remind you, for those who may have joined us late, that this evening's program is Childhood and Adolescence Deviance, Preventions and Solutions. I am the guest host this evening for tonight's TNT Talk. And with me is Ms. Leanne Hawkins, a licensed clinical professional counselor, and Erwin Graves, a retired principal and former deputy chief education officer. Another question that we have for our panelists and listeners and viewers, remember that you can ask your questions in the Zoom chat and in the YouTube chat. We have our co-host there to collect your questions and ask it later on in the program. Okay, so for our panel, based on your experience, what are some of the first signs of underlying deviant behavior? What might be some of the early signs that you would recognize that a problem is brewing?
Okay, I would identify, let's say 2 or 3. If a child or adolescent is consistently lying to the parent or to whosoever is in charge, there is a problem. Okay? Lying. You only lie to cover up something.
There's something, yep.
Okay? Secondly, disobedience, outright disobedience to parents and to those in charge. Consistent disobedience. I'm not saying that a person might not be disobedient once or twice, but when a child is always disobedient, or you have to virtually punish the child in order to get that child to do what you want him or her to do, there is a problem, and you need to get some help. Mm-hmm. Another telltale is where a child or an adolescent blame or places the blame for what they have done on somebody else. They do not take responsibility for their mistakes. I would have a problem with that. I think that is important as a sign telling the parent or the whosoever the caretaker, this child is on the wrong path. You need to get help for him or her.
All right. So from a more clinical perspective, things that we look for are you 100% right, Dad? But things that we look for are things like are you setting fires? Do you torture animals? Do you kill animals? Are you doing those those are some serious issues. If you like to pull off all the lizard's tails and just watch them burn, and different things like those have an underlying they can be problematic severely. You like to see people be in pain, and you have no empathy towards others, or that is an issue. What Dad was saying about lying made me. I thought about it because some parents teach their children to lie.
Yes.
I am home. I mean, and so some things are learned.
Yes.
But they're learned. They're learned more. Most behaviors are learned. And so sexually acting out, I don't think that was discussed, but that is an issue if you are particularly when you are dealing with children that are significantly below your age level. That is a significant behavior that should be dealt with swiftly and very, it shouldn't be covered up then. Like a lot of things people say, what happened in this house, here, in this house, and you keep into the family, and all you're doing is brewing good future criminals or incestuous people because you don't want to tell them that they're wrong. And, because it happened to you and it happened to your mother, and does not mean that it's right, and it needs to continue to perpetuate for the generations. And so some things families normalize, which are deviant, but they normalize it because everybody have gone through it. And I remember going to a house, and the mother was very upfront. She said, everybody in my family has been molested. Everybody. Wow. I am trying to break the pattern, and everybody from her generation, and she was trying to break it with her children. But I mean, she wasn't really successful. But her thing was she wasn't going to cover it up. She brought it up from the beginning, so like how can we make sure this doesn't pass on to their children? And so just being mindful that sometimes these things that lying and not taking personal responsibility. Some parents don't take responsibility. It's never their fault. And so
Correct.
some of these things are learned,
Yeah.
and then they have a much far-reaching consequence for the children in the future, but there are still signs that something is not right.
I think that is quite interesting, the things you were mentioning, because a lot of things are coming up, like there are things that are culturally ingrained within us. I remember not personally participating in it, but knowing that there are persons who would fight, what do you call it, fighting. You want to see them hurt these animals down to the end, dog fighting, and the same lizard things, tormenting animals, lighting a cat's tail on fire and
Mhm.
setting it. I'm thinking these sometimes things that people take for granted as fun or just persons horsing around, they're things that you really should be paying attention to. Um,
So what I'm understanding here is that there are some things that because they are, I would say, culturally ingrained in the family,
yeah,
makes
our
it
society.
difficult. Yeah, well, in this
Yeah.
case, it could be the family because if you grew up in a family where they are smoking herb all the time and
Normal.
therefore, you know, that is a
Normal.
normal thing,
Mm-hmm.
you will just, to you, is normal.
Yeah.
And even the parents and the adults, they might not see that as deviant behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where then the society
Yeah.
and other organizations and other institutions in the country will have to step in. That's where the police comes in anyhow in the long run.
And the other social services agencies
Yeah.
here that would help to mitigate some of these things and help you understand this is not normal. This needs to be nipped in
Right,
the
right.
bud. Um, but some of these things that we've mentioned, the same cultural things that we've done mentioned here are based sometimes on a person's friends and who you associate with. So tell
Yes.
me about, to your mind, speak to the issue of peer influences. We mentioned family and the social development that it would have, that would be brought about because of family and family influences. But when does a child's strongest influence transfer from the parent to the friend or their friends? Because I know at some ages the parents are right, then at some ages at school the teacher is, what the teacher said is gospel, and then there's a process where the friend or the friends are the ones who are most influential. Let's speak to the peer influence.
All right, Dad. I just want to see who's going first. Okay,
You
so
go ahead. Uh, you go ahead.
right, so for it is a normal developmental stage
Yes, it
Mhm.
is.
for children to think what their friends say is gospel.
Yeah.
When you start from young, it is mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy. If whoever is in the household, that is God. That is your world. As life goes on, you see, oh, there's a bigger world outside of my house. I go to
Yeah.
school and I meet other people. The teacher comes into play. I go to church. I see other people there. But after when puberty hits, I would say around puberty or so, between 10 to 13, maybe, then it is almost what your friends think matter. What your friends say matter. And I mean, I think the reason for this primarily is because for the rest of your life, after you get out of your parents' house, you work with people that are friends, your
Yes.
peers, your peer groups. You go into a job, you know, your mother not in the job with you. You have peer groups in the job. So you have to learn how to speak to people, how to relate to people, how to get along with people that you may not even like per se. And you have to figure out those peer relationships. So they become important because those are the ones that you already have for the rest of your life. Yet, I mean, you're gonna marry someone that's not your family, and so those peer relationships become the most important because they also teach you who you are. So they kind of are a reflection on you. So as you are a teenager, you're trying to figure out, well, who am I? Who do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? And then you may have the cool set of kids, and you're like, what I do, I want to be like the popular kids. And sometimes you do,
Yeah.
and sometimes you like based on the personality of the child and the strong and the will of the child, which is important not to break at a small age. They
Yeah.
might say, I have no desire to be like them. But most children want to be like the popular people. That unfortunately, most popular people don't necessarily be doing the right things
That is
because
very true. That is very true.
they don't have to, they don't want to. If they come from a socioeconomic background that is a little bit higher, they have ways to get out of trouble. Their parents have ways of bailing them out, so they don't really adhere to the societal norms because they have outs, right? They have a get out of jail free card, as it were, and so the peers are it's just one of those developmental stages that children go through. And so it's very important for you to, like I said, if when you're small, my children's friends are my friends' children.
Yes, yes.
People that they hang around,
Correct.
are the people they hang around who
Yep.
have children.
Yes.
That's their friends. Their friends, they don't choose their friends. I
Friends,
choose
yep.
their friends because I
Correct.
choose friends.
Yes.
My friends' children are my children's friends.
That's right.
But after a certain age,
Yes.
they will decide if I still like that, who I like,
Yes.
who I don't like,
Mhm.
and then they decide who they want their friends to be. Having a very strong sense of who you are, and being comfortable and liking who you are, and having a certain amount of confidence will help you make good decisions with friends. However, if you don't necessarily like who you are, you're going to try to imitate those people that you think are better.
Yes. People to be with.
That's who I want to be. I want to be confident. I want to be this. That person may also be a jerk, but that's the person that I see. And so that's who I want to be. So it doesn't mean I may have to be a little bit more mean or disrespectful. Okay. But that's the personality that I want. And I want to have a swagger or whatever that I may see this person giving off. And so really knowing who you are and parents taking the time to teach them those things. If you notice that you have a child that is a people pleaser, I have one in my house, love to please everybody. You need to, now it may sound great for parents, right? To have a people pleaser because they're gonna try to please you.
Correct.
When they go to the house, they're gonna try to please everybody else.
Other people, yeah.
And so what may be good for parenting for you may not be good for them for a lifetime.
Outside,
so you have to take note of those behaviors and then teach them. If they don't want to do it, that's okay. What do you want? You have
an opinion. That's right.
You have to kind of help formulate those independent thinking thoughts. No, that can backfire on you because they may come and tell you, well, I don't think this and I don't think that. And you know, that may based on what kind of parent you are, may be a problem because how dare you? But ultimately, you're teaching children to be who they are when they leave your house.
Yes. Giving them the tools. Giving them
every inch of backbone when they leave your house, which means they're going to practice it in your house. And you're going to have to be okay with that to a certain extent. There's a line. But it's a thin line. It's a thin line. It's a line, but there's a thin line between, because they're going to have to learn how to stand up for themselves. And that may mean practicing on you. That don't mean it's right or wrong. But that's what you know, if your child is going to say yes to everything that you say, they're going to say yes to everything that everybody else says as well. And then at that point, it will be a problem. If they can't say no to you, they won't be able to say no to anyone. And then there's so much stressors that come with the inability to tell people no or when to get off.
Yeah.
You know, there's so
I understand this on so many levels.
Yeah, because they have this whole, what will they think of me? Oh, they're not
yes, unsurety.
And so I try to go above and beyond to please a person
to please.
that is not important to please, you know? And so it is very important as parents that you have to understand that the skills that you're practicing them, teaching them for a lifetime, they will have to practice. And it's going to be on you in your house.
But I will tell you,
the appropriate way to do it, it has to happen, and you're going to have to be okay with that, or else you're going to have longer problems at the end of the day. They're going to have longer problems as adults, being unable to cope and monitor, and you're going to have a lot of built up anger, which can turn to depression because they just can't tell people no.
What's on their mind.
Yeah.
What's on their mind. I take great comfort in the things that you're saying, because I'm in a parental tussle with a personality similar to mine. So our personality clashes are frequent and very verbose, lots of opinion. And I tell myself what I've said. Sometimes the child has to express and be able to say to me what you would want them to say to somebody who would want them to. So I take great comfort from what you said, and I'm going to put my tail between my legs and I'm going to move along. Yes, Mr. Graves.
But you know that in our society, though.
Before you say something, Dad.
What we are saying goes counter.
Wait, she want let Leanne a chance to speak.
Before you say that, and what you're saying is, I mean, if you're in the ideal situation with both parents, because children have personalities. And my daughter, my middle daughter, it's just like me. And sometimes my husband looks at her and looks at me and says, "You got it." So I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that. And I must say a lot of things that I don't notice. Like I was doing something and I said, "Pick that up." She was like, "What's wrong with your hands?" And I was like, I must have said that to her. I don't remember saying it, but why do you think you can say
that thing? Yes, yes.
So but you have to, if you are, what we do here in terms of children, like if there are some things that you know how to deal with better because you see more of your personality in that child.
Yes.
And you either have to coach the other person through it.
Yes.
And or deal with it yourself. Like you, as parents, we have to be like teammates and like just kind of manage. Like if it was like basketball, you'd be passing the ball, but you have to manage it together. And
like team.
There's some things that my son is that's more like his dad, and so there's some things that he just deals with better because he gets it better. And so then after I would debrief with him as it were, okay, what could I have done differently?
Yes.
What and you have to figure out, because it's your job to parent that child, not that child to figure out the same needs are perfect, because they all need different things. And of course, there's gonna be there's gonna be a little bit of them feeling you out and knowing you and so forth. But you need to know what is going to be effective for this particular
child. Yeah.
And if you have more than one, Kim, you only got one, but you got more than one. You have to.
I pray for you.
It's important to just be able to utilize those inner knowledge of if the personality aligns to, and then do your best from that perspective to kind of manage it as a household.
Very true. Yes, Mr. Grace.
Yeah, I was saying that what Leanne is saying sounds all well and good, but in our society, we don't practice those things because really, there's still the thought that I am the boss in here.
Yeah.
And what I say
in here, yep.
You will do. All right. But as she rightly said, we need to allow our children to develop their self-confidence. My child, like Leanne, is not now known only as my child. You understand? She must develop. She would have develop her own identity. Sometimes I wonder how she gets so, but the point is, she seems to have had the opportunity to do things that, or she got away and did things that she should not have done. Now, every child is different, and parents need to know that because they are individuals, and whereas you can tell a child, as she was saying, okay, do this once, sometimes you have to repeat it to another more than once or many times, or sometimes you have to impose sanctions on one child, whereas another child will just be obedient and go.
And complain.
And therefore, we bear in mind the fact that you are training these children for life.
That's
they must have their own identity. Yes. Their identity, as she rightly said, is attached to you when they are children, but they break off and go on their own ways. And you would hardly want a person at 20 to only be known as Kim Lynch's daughter. She must be known for something else.
Yes,
you understand?
Yes.
And as she goes through life, what will happen is that she will forge new friendships and she will make her mark because she has been taught the skills of critical thinking and creativity and all the things that we talk about in schools.
Yeah, that is very timely for me. So Justin will be pleased to know that the host is also learning and gaining information. Ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing this evening childhood and adolescent deviance prevention and solutions. Our guest here this evening, Mr. Irwin Graves, a retired principal and also former Deputy Chief Education Officer. Along with him is his daughter, Mrs. Leanne Hawkins. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor. She's currently residing in the US of A. A question that came from the audience before we continue with the set questions that I had prepared to ask. This is from an audience member, when we were small, we would cut the tails of lizards and throw stones at frogs. Is there a difference between childhood deviance and childhood mischievous fun? If yes, how can we tell the difference? As to sort that in, I'll read it again. When we were small, we would cut the tails off lizards and throw stones at frogs. Is there a difference between childhood deviance and childhood mischievous fun? If yes, how can we tell the difference? I think we should start with Leanne, since this would definitely be in her.
Since she brought up the idea,
Yeah,
I know that when I was young, that was long years ago.
long years ago.
We didn't cut off the lizard tail, but we used to catch the lizards and tie them out.
Mm-hmm.
However, with frogs, we used to catch the frogs and we throw stones at the frogs. And I would not say that I am a criminal because they threw stones at a frog. But Leon brought up the brilliant idea. So
All right, so there's obviously a cultural element to everything, right?
Yes, yes.
You have to bear that in mind. There is a cultural element to stuff, and things are different over here than they are at home. However, this is where I would say with the line, throwing stones and missing is one thing. Pulling a frog and banging it head in, and then watching it bleed out is completely different. You understand?
Wow.
So there, I want to say the line is kind of obvious, but it may not be.
It may not be.
Catching lizards or cutting off their tail because they grow back or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But taking a lizard and getting a sharp object and cutting it one leg off, and the next leg off, and then that yet, and then the next leg off, and the next leg cut up a little piece, you know, and you're watching it like literally suffer. That's what I'm talking about as a severe issue that is starting young, you know, because people think people just get up one morning. For example, like serial killers and stuff like that. People think that, you know, it just happened to happen. Sometimes there are predispositions to these elements of wanting to kill. That when they're children, you can, if you are not vigilant, you may notice it and may be able to target. There's different. I mean, it's so hard to just say for one thing, but definitely torturing something is different than just throwing something at it and actually taking the time to kill it. It's completely, it's more difficult to sit down and actually step on something and crush it to its dead.
Wow.
And it's just throw something, you may hit it and it may die or you may miss. You know, there's a difference. So there's obviously a cultural element. Look out for the things that are more torture oriented, and that you're, you know, I don't know if you can see those things. You know, when a child is a little bit odd and they like what it like is not, it may be a tad bit dark, and you may just say, but they're gonna grow a bit, but they may not, you know. And so those are the things that are more. I mean, lighting the cat tail on fire. I don't know if that's normal.
I hope not.
I don't know if it's normal, but if you're gonna capture it and then put it in there and then wait for it to burn, and you watching it while it's doing these things, those are the things to look at.
Yeah, and as persons think about things that they may be concerned about, I want you to remember that we have two agencies that we spoke of earlier. We have the Next Steps Family Center with registered counseling psychologist, Miss Lydia Worrell. I'll share the information with you now, but you will see at the end of the show, 258-6537 or Next Step FC@gmail.com. If you're having concerns about a child that is not necessarily, the information is not necessarily sitting right with you, feel free to contact Miss Worrell or Mrs. Walters, who's a counseling psychologist, and her number is 268-1221. There are lots of opinions about behaviors and things of this nature. Even that activity with how you play fun, how you have fun activities. Some may say, oh, they don't have money, they don't have the resources that they need to participate. They can't pay for taekwondo, they can't pay for drama. So they occupy themselves in different ways. To your mind, how does socioeconomic status influence the childhood of becoming a child becoming involved in deviant behavior? Does the socioeconomic, does money play a part? The haves and the have not play a part in whether a person is involved in deviant behavior or not?
Absolutely. I think it absolutely plays a part. Um, but bear in mind, there are some people that are rich or are wealthy, and
Yeah.
they're deviant too because they can pay to get out of trouble.
Trouble.
You understand? So
Yeah.
so let's not think that because you're poor it means you'll be deviant. There's some deviant people that are rich, but they just know they got a good lawyer in their back pocket. And they have all these loopholes because I mean, if you guys watch any kind of news in the US of A, look at all these Caucasian people killing people and they're not in jail, you know? So even children, the last little boy that just went and shoot up someone at this protest, and he's in juvie. And then there's this black boy that they said stole a backpack, which was a lie, and they put him in records. You know what I mean? So socioeconomics absolutely has an impact for multiple reasons. Number one, how people see you, and that just that ability to buy yourself out versus have a good defense to prove that you may not have done something. If you're unable to, you may not have done it, but if you don't, if you are able to, if you don't have enough proof or the legal background to or back up, you may get blamed for something that is not, that is not your fault. I feel like I digress just a little bit though. So how does it influence the livelihood? The neighborhood, go back to the neighborhood that you grew up in. If you are in a gated community, right? You're in a gated community, and even though some of them they still have people that do nonsense, like I personally believe, but you have we always used so my husband would always laugh. We live in the suburbs, right? And there are people that lived with him in the suburbs, but they dress like they live in the hood. Their pants low. Your parents in a house that costs a good piece of money, but you would be living like someone that rents like a 500 square foot space. You know, because you're trying to assimilate into that culture, but you're not from that world. You know, and so sometimes it's just if that's what is perceived to be cool, that is what children may seek or try to go after. However, the ability to, for example, if you're in a gated community, chances are there's nobody in there selling drugs. You understand? Because the people that sell drugs are already outside the gate. That's the whole purpose of having a gate. If you are not in a gated community and you live in the what we call, I would say, the hood, the projects, and so forth, the houses that are very close together, the likelihood that is what they do. That is their lifestyle. That is sometimes even their way to get out. If I make this much money, then I could catch a bus and I could go to the next side of the country and I could get out of this life, And sometimes their deviant behavior is not for a lifetime, is a way out, is a way to get out. It could be, let's say, some people literally go and become strippers because they got to pay for tuition so they can get out. Like it's a means to an end. But in the meantime, is it deviant? Is it criminal? Sometimes yes, but the focus is hopefully not to get caught, so that you can go and get out of that particular community to have what you would consider a life that you would prefer, rather than what you were necessarily grown up in. So where you live, how much money you have, your ability to pay for stuff. I mean, there are things that some children would never be exposed to because their parents don't have the money, and that is. I mean, parents can. You don't have to have a lot of money to be creative, to educate children and to make their childhood happy. But there are some things that you just will never do if you don't have the money. You may never leave the country. You may never leave the island. And there's so much to learn from just leaving Barbados.
Yeah.
Because you get to see, oh my goodness, the life is so
expands so your knowledge.
Cultural people. There's just the world is so much bigger. But if you have never, if you don't go to St. Lucie, got people that in St. Lucie, St. Lucie too far. What are you talking? And
go to St. Lucie and hear about Biggs. Yes.
Yeah, you don't even want to leave the parish. We're in. And it closes the mind of your child. They do not have the experiences, and without the experiences, they lack. You understand? So there is a line. Their money has its place, in educating and opening that world for your children, and it can breed deviance, because if your parents bail you out every time you do something wrong,
yes.
it can do that for you, and or it can help you just see, I don't have to do this. I can, life can be completely different.
Elevate, yeah.
Okay, I have heard Leanne pontificate, right? and in the first case, poverty is not a crime.
That's
It
true.
is a challenge.
Yes.
And in my growing up, honestly, I cannot say that I really knew anybody who was extremely wealthy. I did not interact with very wealthy individuals. Most of the boys and girls who grew up in my village were poor, and their parents were hardworking, and their parents taught the children to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, most of them have been able to make a positive contribution to the place, right? Now, in a lot of cases, parents will find it, I'm talking about more than their parents now, I'm not talking about my parents. If you're poor, you find it difficult to maybe even provide the basic needs.
Necessities, yeah.
The necessities for your children. And there are some unscrupulous people who, or adults here I'm talking about, and even parents, who might lure them into whatever behavior in order to provide for them. Now, instead of uplifting them and teaching them positive things, they use them for their own whatever they wanted.
Devices,
devices, and mislead these young people, leading them into these get-rich schemes quick. On the other hand, as Leanne said, if you are able to afford whatever you want, you might very well end up in as a high-end drug user, because there are drugs that if you have money, you can buy, and if you don't have the money, you will just have to hear about them. So money does not cause
success,
deviance, or poverty doesn't cause deviance. I think it depends a lot on the other influences within in the family and the peer group and that sort of thing that makes that different. However, I would say that it is extremely challenging in these days to raise children, because it seems to me, let's say with the technology and thing, everybody has a cell phone, everybody has technology. And if I can't afford technology because my parents are too poor, what do you expect me to do?
Right.
And parents and children are placed on a lot of pressure. Because the world is a lot smaller.
Yes.
And whereas when I grew up, I don't even know if I heard a radio too regularly.
Wow.
Now everybody has technology, or should have technology, it looks like. And children are exposed to so many things that under normal circumstances,
they wouldn't be.
or when we were living back then, we didn't have to grapple with.
I take both points, because it's to me it's more values, what the child or the parent values that are instilled. Because you can have money and be deviant, you can be poor and be deviant, you can have money and not be, or you can not have money and not be. So I think it's a lot of value based, because my mother would always speak about bringing home that pencil from school. Grandmother said, "Don't bring it here. Who gave you that pencil? I give you that pencil. I didn't give you that pencil. Carry it back." Little things like that she speaks about all the time. School wasn't far, but you had to, at the end of the day, walk wherever it was and take back what was not yours. It was not what, and small things like that lead persons to understand that they need to grow, to not take up nothing that don't belong to them. And when, if you accept things into your home that are not yours or not the child's, you didn't send them, questions can be raised.
Kim, and if I
Yes,
can
please.
say, like, so my point, Dad, I'm speaking more from over here perspective, because I have not been home in so long, right?
Okay.
And so my point of reference is what children do over here. And Kim, I know I have worked with clients that come home with like 200 plus jacket that they stole. And in my mind, it was like, why
At a
didn't
time?
Hmm?
At one time, or over a period of time, they're just bringing them home?
The jacket was worth that much money.
Oh, the jacket, one jacket. Oh, okay. Wow.
No,
Okay.
the thing was like, tell them to take it back. But I guess the parents' concern is if they take it back, then they can call the police and then they can get them.
Okay.
And you know, and that kind of stuff. Because, but oh wow, and like you said, it didn't start no $200 jacket. It started with something that was small that the parents probably just that kind of slide under the radar.
Yeah.
And also, I would have to say like the values is so important because a lot of times people that don't have necessarily the higher socio-economic, they put a lot of value in things like materials, things, clothes, shoes. So they're gonna look like they got money, but they ain't got anything to eat, you know? And it also happens with people that look like they have more. So they may have a very expensive house and but there's no food. And the children depend on school to eat. Because some people said if I lose this house, then my neighbors, some people gonna know that I really ain't got white. So they will pay for the mortgage, and there will be zero, and I do mean zero food in that house. And they would have when the weekend come is torture. But they don't eat till Monday morning when they go back to school. So imagine that there's a pandemic, right? And so there's some people that will let their house. They will get rid of they will leave their house, but they will keep their car. They will want to live in the car before they pay for the rent. They will pay for the car, or they would have their stuff in storage, but they're homeless. I mean, the priorities are just. I mean, I can't understand how you can pay for storage and then, but I have really nice things, but you don't live there.
Mind blowing.
I mean, so it just really depends on those initial values. What is important, and it kind of goes back to that. What you think people think about you.
Yes.
That we talked about from the very beginning, what the peers think and that peer influence, because sometimes common sense doesn't even reign, because it has to be, how do I look? What does it look like? Am I
priorities and values?
Am I given the appearance of someone that is successful or financially, whatever?
So your values need to really be on point. Values really need to be what they ought to be, because you could be living a world. And if the pandemic has not taught us anything, a lot of things don't matter.
Children have to learn from parents that it makes more sense to have $200 in your pocket than to wear them too much. I mean, I just don't even understand why people spend that much money on shoes. You're in the dirt. I mean, cheese on bread, it is in the dirt. Why you gonna put your money in the dirt? But you can have it in your belly or somewhere else that's a little bit
educate your mind and educate your brain.
Yeah, but some people, because when they look out, they step out, they're gonna go, they're going to this, they're going to that, and then they go and they ain't got no roof. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but you have those are values that have been passed on from your parents. The value of
I think a lot of that is a lot of persons who didn't have, want to make sure that the children do have what they didn't have, and sometimes they cross the line a little bit too far because they overdo what was not. And I was having a conversation sometime. I was saying a lot of the food that was scoffed at before is now expensive, healthy food. Sega and linseed is now flaxseed and that kind of thing. It's now good for your hair and it's good for your food. The things that people scoffed at before because it was poor people food is now what the doctors are saying you need to be taking in. So there is something about the things of the past helping us in the present. A question from the audience to both of you. Said you spoke about consistency in child rearing. Person says, I live in an extended family. How can I navigate accepting my child's grandparents' love and care, yet not allow them to spoil or misguide the children? I'll say that again, and I'm glad that this is a father, daughter, grandchildren here on our panel. You said you spoke of consistency in child rearing. I live in an extended family. How can I navigate accepting my child's grandparents' love and care and yet not allow them to spoil or misguide them? Who's going first?
Oh, have your own place. I mean, it is very, very difficult. That is well written. It's a very, let me tell you, but it is, there is only one boss in that house, and it probably is the boss is the person that the house belongs to. You understand?
Suppose I live in an extended house and I'm living in the house doesn't belong to me, but my children, I live with my children there. Who's the boss there then?
Yeah, that's the problem.
You might
That's the
think that it's
problem.
you, but it's the person that owns the house. You understand? So it is a very difficult. Grandparents will spoil their children as they should. They will. That's their job.
Yes, that's their job.
Their job is not to be parents. Now, what my father said earlier about our body being on the same page is crucial, but it's easier to visit versus if you're there every day, because you're gonna do that with your little child. Oh Lord, you're too hard and this and that, and they were much harder on you, but they're not in that. They're not in that parenting space anymore. They don't live there. You understand? Their space is on breast relaxation, peace, and harmony, and making life better for the grandchild. My grandmother used to do my chores. Loved it. She was on there every day. But when she do those chores, I loved it. Had she lived in my house, I would have never done any chores. And I still won't know how to do anything. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it makes a difference. I mean, it may sound rough and harsh and maybe even unrealistic, but my advice is to move out and get your own spot, because it is ultimately the person's whose house it is. And I remember when I was a teenager, or I was a young adult, and my father told me, he said, if you ever decide that you're getting married and you're gonna move into my house, I'm saying this verbatim, guys. He said, I'm gonna excuse you from the room was not to embarrass you. And I can tell he not in here.
Wow.
Because if y'all start to argue and say, shut up in my house, I didn't want to hear that. You understand? Because ultimately, the person that runs the house is the person that the house belongs to. It's not the new couple. And I know that Barbados, a lot of people marry and live in their parents' house and stuff like that.
Yes.
But my suggestion is always be the same. Move and have your own place, because once you are under other people's roof, they have a say in everything, whether you want them to or not. And they're not meaning to go against you. They just don't agree with you, and they're your parents, so they're gonna tell you exactly what they feel, and they might be in front of the child too, because they don't have that boundary, because they're your parents. You know what I mean? And so that's my personal opinion. Go ahead.
So it must be a space where you're able to say, okay, so that's your child, deal with it. There's no space to say that's your child, deal with it. I'm not going to step on your instruction. I'm not going to undermine what you would have said. Tell me what's your take on it, Mr. Graves.
Let me give you an experience. First of all, let me state that I think that there can only be one real man or one woman in a house.
Wow.
To navigate between grandmother, grandfather, all that sort of thing, you're looking for real serious talent. Let me share an experience. When my children were young, my father-in-law came here at our house, right? And for some reason, I was correcting either my son or daughter. Leanne might remember better than me. And the audacity that he had told me that I was doing what was wrong. He got me so angry. I told him, listen to me. No, but again, you intervene when I'm correcting my children to tell me what I should do. Now, you think I could do that if I was in his house? You understand me?
Wow.
If I was in his house, I would have to either put my tail between my legs and take it, because it is his house. He is in charge. Now, what I'm saying, it sounds hard. You might not have the finances. It's hard.
Yes.
But the reality is that if you are going to bloom and blossom as an individual, as a parent, honestly, move out. It is the only thing really to continue harmony. The grandparents might be nice. I'm a grandparent now.
Yes.
Okay. and things that I cannot afford for my children, I can probably afford now for theirs. But if they tell me do not give, of course I will keep my money. You understand?
Yes.
But if I'm living in their house, I will have to accept. So I understand it's a weird, delicate situation.
Yes, it is, because everybody's finances will not allow.
Yeah,
for
I
immediate
understand.
events.
You know,
Yeah.
I understand, but
Over here is a little different in that sometimes the parents live with them. So say my in-laws live with
With you.
me,
Mm-hmm.
I in charge. You understand? I run
Mhm.
it. But if I
yeah,
at any point live on the, if you move into my house, it's different. I still in charge of my children. I almost in charge of you. So I could say certain things to you that I can't not say to you if I am in your house. But you are mine.
yeah.
And
That's the reality.
that is a fact. That
That's
is
the
a fact.
reality.
So there is I mean, it's difficult. I would just recommend not necessarily, plan yourself accordingly before you. And I know people do it all the time. I just don't recommend it at all.
Yeah,
I hope that the person they question, they're in a situation where they can have a conversation with the grandparents so that the boundaries and the lines
yeah.
are maintained so that relationships can blossom, because those things do cause friction. So we're winding down. So we have just two more questions. How can a child whose environment is less conducive to positive behaviors avoid getting involved in those behaviors and becoming a productive adult? We spoke about different things along the way. Tell me certain things that you think can help improve a child's environment. Your environment is not the best. It's not where you would like to be. It's not ideal. We spoke earlier about the gated communities versus the hood, using the term from North America. What kind of things can you suggest for a child whose environment is less than conducive for to produce positive behaviors and getting them in not become deviant?
I think one thing that we did not discuss yet was personalities. Like there's a personality that element to deviance, right? Not be you make your own decisions. Ultimately, is your responsibility and your choice. And there are some children that are in the worst of situations, and they say, "I will never do that, and I'm never going to become that, and I'm going to be different." There are homeless people that live on the street that graduate high school and go get a full scholarship to one of the Ivy League schools. You
Wow.
are in your environment, so while there's an environmental pull, which is a huge pull, if the personality of the child is strong enough, the will of the child and their desire to change and be different, if that is, and that may not have anything to do with the parents, that may be 100% DNA. If that exists, there is always the ability that they can be able to look around them and say, this is not what I'm going to do with my life. And I will make the steps that are different, which is most times go to school and get an education to make myself get out of this situation. And so there is a
I'm
personality limit. There is sometimes that children have
yeah.
the best of all kinds of worlds. The parents do the best. They're on point. They're giving them all these access to the good stuff. And personality wise, then don't care and they don't want it. And so there is that element of personal choice, personal responsibility, and also just who they are as a person that plays into their decisions and how things work out.
May I
You
interject
may, you
here?
may.
I think that what can make a person change really, and we can't. I don't want that we discount this. The work of the Holy Spirit
Amen.
on a person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know people. I have known people who came from pretty desperate backgrounds, and at a young age they gave their life to Christ, and that made a difference in their brain, not in their whole development. So that when a person sincerely comes to Christ and knows that the Holy Spirit will teach and guide them, and if they are sincere and they are exposed to the teachings that the church and all the organizations within the church give, they are able to change.
Absolutely.
And the impact is great. I know people who say, because of the church, their outlook is different and they have been successful, not only members of the church, but members of society. So the church has a big role.
I fully endorse that. I know persons personally who would have grown from not being able to string a sentence together to being able to speak and have risen to the heights of their professional field because of the work that they would have gone through with the church and the work of the Holy Spirit on their lives. I think that that is an excellent point. And I'm also a big proponent of education. Um, my father used to always insist that school was a big part. If we wanted school, if we wanted clothes or whatever to go to a whatever event,
Mhm.
it may or it may not, but most likely you may not get that. But if it was for school, you made sure you got those school books, those school shoes. You could want 100 things for school. You got the things for school because education is important. I try to have persons understand that education helps take you from nothing and brings you up. Nobody can take away anything that is in your brain. Education and let the Holy Spirit work. Before I go off
There,
teaching.
there's something about the Seventh-day Adventist Church
Yes.
that inspires
Mm-hmm.
people to be educated.
That's correct.
Okay, there
That's
is
correct.
something about it. The church stresses the importance of education. It has the educational institutions, but it has the environment for learning.
Yes.
Sabbath school and that sort of thing. I know many people who would testify to the fact that the church began their university education. Many of them have gone on to do very well educationally, but when they came in, as you said, they could hardly do anything.
Mhm.
So the church is, our church, I should say, has a very big. If you look at most Adventist churches, you'll see that, especially in this age, there's a cohort of young people who are excelling educationally.
Yes, and a lot of the different things you mentioned earlier, the Pathfinder Club, the Adventurer Club,
Right, yes.
all the different activities, and those, and to adulthood into the Master Guide Club, I find when you are involved in, for environmental purposes, if you change your environment to be in the church environment, you can thrive. Not
Yeah,
only learning about academics and for this life, but for the life to come from
they come, yeah.
childhood
And also,
straight through
the,
adulthood.
I would say
Church
the Adventist
environment.
Church has a high number of males that are educated because it's very, because they promote education. It's
Yes.
not only amongst females because sometimes you can have a lot of educated women and can't find a
Mm-hmm.
man that went to school. You understand? And so I think the Adventist Church has a high number of males that go to college or university. Just
Mm-hmm.
I would want to note that formal education is not the only type of education. And so
Correct.
while
Correct.
while
Absolutely.
what I don't say it's not made for everybody, but it's not made for everybody. But they're also based to be successful with great education. You understand? So
Correct.
bearing in mind that there is formal and informal education, they all count, they all matter.
Yes.
Right.
Don't necessarily think that you have to go to UE in order to be successful.
Become.
There are
Correct.
ways to be successful and very successful at that financially without university, even though we always promote university. And I would not take it away. What I would say is I would pair them together. I would get a trade and I would go to university because
Yes.
when this pandemic hit, you know who had jobs, right?
Yes.
Who had jobs? Who had jobs? The jobs at the Adventist church. Because typically growing up, they have certain jobs that they promote, right?
Yeah.
Doctor or nurse, teacher, because of certain things and the cyber fun stuff. Who was getting paid? If you work in a hospital, you have a job. If you have a teaching, if you teach, you have a job, even though you're teaching from home. There are lots of jobs that are not jobs or that are done because of the pandemic, especially over here, because apparently entertainment was everything. And so there are lots of people, I mean, as y'all know, millions of people outside of jobs, and there was just a job. But if you had that particular career niche that is always needed, teaching, you have a job. You're gonna teach online. And I mean, my husband's a teacher, so and it's not easy to teach online by any means. It's been the first week and it's been hectic, and I don't really like it at all, actually. But the point remains, you're getting paid, right? And so when the pandemic hit, those jobs that were going to be sustainable were really evident, and those jobs that people had that just in a minute, I don't want to say it wasn't important, but it wasn't important because we could do without it for months, and it's fine. Those are the ones that you want to avoid. If you work for an electricity company, you have a job. Even if you putting up wires, taking down wires, so it just and that's a trade. If you're
essential. That's right.
You're going to be always, and then if your job can easily translate to online, because obviously a lot can, well not a lot, but quite a few can, then you're going to be didn't have a job. So I think we should look for almost pandemic-proof jobs, just because we have this experience to pull from. Because
to work with, yes.
jobs that will always be required, and then there are people that are literally, evicted, not because this pandemic hit and now they have nothing and they were put out after that period of time was given for them to be unable to pay their bills. So definitely pay attention to formal education and also pay attention to trade work.
Yes. I'm going to ask you to both give me some closing remarks, because I was so into this because I was taking my own notes as we were going through the session this evening, because there's so much to learn and there's so much to gain. Childhood and adolescence deviance is what we were discussing, and prevention and solutions. I'm going to just ask you to, both of you, to give me a short wrap up. What summary would you want persons to go away with from this evening with, as far as the topic is concerned? And immediately after that, I'm going to have my room tech provide the slides information showing the various assistance that can be gained from the various two agencies that we were mentioning here this evening. Because we all are going to interact with children or adolescents at some point in time. You have a cousin, a niece, a nephew, somebody that is in your care. We need to help prevent them from becoming deviant. So the prevention and solutions. So in your final wrap up, we start with you, Mr. Graves, and then Leanne.
Yeah, age before beauty. Um, and wrapping up, I just want to give an example of something that happened that shows the importance of the family, the household, in child rearing. Years ago, I was in a certain school, and there was this young man who lived in a certain district in Barbados. I won't call it district because, but it's a district, well-known district. He lived with his grandmother because his mother had died young. His grandmother and an uncle lived in the house. The uncle apparently grew weed in the backyard, and he knew. He stole a plant and dried it, and he smoked the whole plant himself.
Wow.
For that, I told him he was selfish, because if you have a whole plant, you should at least share. His uncle discovered and almost killed him with beat.
Wow.
Because he had stolen, as it were, his money. I realized that he was in this position. I called the grandmother because I had heard that he had brought some of this stuff to school. I called the grandmother for an interview. And when she came to the office, she behaved as though she didn't know anything about this. She didn't know anything about marijuana or anything. And as we continued in the conversation, the boy looked at her and said, "Granny, you getting on as though I do the worst thing.
Wow.
Will you just smoke it too?"
Wow.
Right? Now, she was sending to this young man a message. She was not in a position to correct him. Now, the woman was probably about, well, she may have been younger than I thought. She looked like 70 something, but she could have really been 50 something.
Wow.
But I consider the fact that, the age of the boy, the age of the mother who had died, and so on. What came through to me at that time, and still is very serious now, is that what happens in our homes, around our houses, impact our children. What has become of that young man? I have seen him more often in the newspaper.
Wow.
On the court page. And that is exactly why I had told her. I said, listen, if this young man, if you don't bring that, I've changed the way you are carrying on, and this young man is carrying on, he is going to end up in prison. And he has been there over and over and over. Wow. Maybe he should be in his 30s, early 30s, or late 30s by now, or early 40s. And he has gone to prison so often for illegal drugs.
Wow.
As parents and as grandparents, and as family members, we have a real serious responsibility to our children and youth. we need to really bring them up in the right way. It is hard work, and it is probably going to get harder. But God has given us children not to raise for our own aggrandizement, but for His kingdom. And we should therefore take it very, very seriously. What we do with them today when they're young will very well impact on what they become and what contributions they will be able to make to society or society make to them. And I would therefore advise all of our listening audience and our members in the church to take good care of our children and youth, because they are the future of the church, the future of the society, and the future for the development of God's kingdom. Well, thank you for having me here tonight. God bless.
Thank you. Yes, Leanne, very quickly.
So what I want to say, I wanted to actually touch a little bit on the last question because I thought it was so important about cyber connectivity and being how, so I'm going to close up with that statement. So in terms of keeping your children safe, particularly from electronics and devices, right? Because they're everywhere, they have phones. There are phones that you are able to have for your child when they're younger, and I mean like under 10, if they need to have a phone at all, that you can literally have program in the phone, the police, and your number. That's it. When children have it on, like a literal the internet at their fingers, they have access to so much things that are not that they cannot developmentally process, that it may lead to like more sexual deviant behaviors and stuff like that, because pornography is a huge thing on the internet. And so as parents, there are ways to manage things. Even if they have a phone, you can even like the TV and stuff like that, you can do parental control. You can have it that their text messages come to your phone, on their way to there, so you can monitor these things at a certain age. You're not completely useless with technology. So technology is huge. You have to become savvy so you can protect your children from the internet, from predators that are trying to talk to you and so forth. It is your job. Ultimately, what I would like to leave with you guys as a parent, in terms of helping with deviant behavior, one sentence that I always love, it says rules without, it came from an elder from my church actually, rules without relationship leads to rebellion. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. If you want to, if your child is always rebellious, you may have to check your relationship with that child. And if you're dead on the rule, but there's no love, there's no security, there's no communication, the child may rebel. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen across the board, but it's something to take into consideration. Take the time. I know as parents, sometimes we work a lot and we have all these things going, you've got to keep the house a certain way and so forth. Take the time to spend with your children doing nothing. Take the time to learn who your children are, to talk to them. And as they grow, they're going to change. Change with them, grow with them, and be aware of who they are so you can guide. Because eventually they're going to be gone. And when they're gone, that's it. What you did is done, and there's no coming back. So the time that you have right now is not going to last forever.
It's true.
But you have, and I know this is the time that we accumulate stuff for retirement and stuff, and we're going to build and we work hard and stuff like that. And those are important things, but you have to, it is never going to be as important as that child's future. And so you can be the most successful person at retirement. If your child is in a ditch somewhere, you are not successful. And that time could have been better spent elsewhere. There's a quote that says, at the end of life, no one says I should have spent more time in the office. You understand? Nobody says that ever. At the end of life, it's always maybe they should have, maybe family, maybe that, maybe this person, maybe I should have said sorry. Take your time and develop those relationships. Know your children, learn them again, and learn them again, because they will continue to change. But it is absolutely worth it, because as you lay down the rules, you want to have that relationship there to decrease the likelihood of the rebellion. And so happy that you guys got me on tonight. I'm probably from the US of A, but I am based at heart. So have a wonderful night, and thank you.
Thank you both. We want to thank on behalf of the hosts of TNT Thursday Night Talk and the St. Thomas District of Seventh Adventists. I almost said Central District of Seventh Adventists. We want to thank you for being here and participating. We had Erwin Graves, a retired principal and a former deputy chief education officer, and Mrs. Leanne Hawkins, a licensed clinical professional counselor who joined us from the United States. We want to thank you both. Also, we want to thank the registered psychologists and professional counselors of LIS, Mrs. Shante Walters. They specialize in couples and family therapy, individual counseling and psychotherapy, group therapy, parent education seminars and workshops, and also Miss Lydia Worrell at Next Steps Family Center. And interestingly enough, they have a program coming up where there is a back to school goals where they're helping students who can see it's up on the screen, helping them reintegrate, feeling connected, coping with anxiety, managing new routines and managing emotions. And the information is there on your screen. I want to thank both Mrs. Hawkins and Mr. Graves for being our guests here. And I'm going to turn over to Mr. Justin Ali as we
Yes.
close tonight's Thursday night talk. And I want to thank you, Mr. Ali, for having me guest host with you this evening.
What a wonderful job. I sat and I was completely spellbounded by the discussion, the warmth, the love, the camaraderie. I didn't want to interject at any time because I saw the flow. I didn't want to interrupt the flow at all. And I really want to thank Mr. Graves and Leanne as well. You saw the family connection, the good parenting skills coming out. You saw exhibited there the discussion that was warm, that was friendly, that was engaging, riveting, and I really learned a lot as well as a parent myself, and especially the question that posed with the grandparents and how Mr. Graves really stood up. You know, that is a serious thing. You know, you really have to stand your ground and thing. That was incredible. I want to thank all of the persons who would have brought this program into fruition. Sister Katrina Bradshaw, she's the person behind all of this. I really want to thank her for that as well, and all of the team as well. This is the last show. This is the season finale of TNT for season 1. This season 1, we're going to repackage and rebrand and do a whole set for season 2. Look out for season 2. Epic. And we just want to thank all of the producers, all of the St. Thomas District, all of the persons who would have watched us, pray for us, encourage us, all of the persons who would have worked really, really hard to make this. It is because of COVID that we have TNT. So, yes, COVID is challenging. We had a lot of deaths and a lot of persons, you know, catching COVID. But at the same time, there's positives that can come out of this. And this program is by no means one of these things that come out of COVID. So on behalf of the St. Thomas District, I just want to thank all of the persons. There's so many persons to thank for making this possible. All of the persons who've joined us, my number 1 fan, Sister Marcia, all of our members, all persons who call us from overseas. There are persons who meet me on the street and tell me about TNT. So I just let you know that TNT goes far and wide, you know, and so on. So I'm really, really humbled by the experience, humbled by the district to allow me to be hosting this. And for Kim as well, Kim, and you know, we had a lot of discussions, Kim, about how we're gonna frame from year 1, how it started, how it unfolded, and it mushroomed into something beautiful.
Praise
so
the
I just want to thank God for all of that. So Mr. Graves and Leanne, I just want to again thank you, and Kim, you did a wonderful job hosting. So next time, you never know, you might replace me and the producers may fire me also. Let us close it down, ladies and gentlemen, with prayer. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks. All the praise and all the glory and all the honor go to you for what a wonderful season we had with TNT. And is, you know, a sad notion that we have to close this chapter of it, but we're going to begin again soon, very soon in season 2. And we need to have a new energy, a new focus, a new drive, a new, you know, focus. So we thank you for all of what you have done for us and what you will do. So into your hands we commit everything, and what we have learned, cement it in our families and our homes, that we will raise children to come up to give you praise and glory and honor. And as grandparents that hope to be. Lord, help them to look on and encourage and not be, the things that they should not be. So, Father, thank you for all of what was said tonight and what we will do in the future. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 I am Justin Alina, and this is Kim. We are signing off for our last ENT for season. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.